Hi, I'm Rafaqat Mirza, and this is a living example when unethical reporter goes out of his way to harm a person without any regards to his rights or code of ethic for journalism. Mazhar Farooqui, who writes for Gulf News, published a series of articles in gulfnews.com alleging serious and harmful allegations towards me. The first story was published on April 10th, 2019. I have since sued the reporter, Mazhar Farooqui, and the golfnews.com in High Court in London for defamation, slander, and libel. I got an out of jurisdiction order from High Court in London against Mr. Farooqui and the golfnews.com. I, I was also able to get a court order to serve Mr. Farooqui via email and golfnews.com by post. Both parties have been served. There's a good and bad in every profession. Journalism is no exception. The unethical people within any media outlet can do more harm than good, but are allowed to operate because of sensationalism in journalism turned into entertainment rather than information. I personally know and met reporters who will go out of their ways to publish a story which is fair representation of the facts and backed by proper proof. But what do you do when a reporter doesn't care about the facts and will write a story which is not only unethical, but he is in the center of it all at personal level for whatever personal or professional gains he may have gained? Why would a reporter do this? There are many reasons for it. Has a bone to pick with the subject of the story, personal favors to others, or simply the eyeballs and or the money? Bigger the possibility of the spread of the story, more reason unethical reporter will make it juicy, spicy, even if the truth has to be bent to the point that is shattered into pieces or create fake news on purpose. Every person who knows me, heard of me, my employees or business associates are bound to not only read the story by Mazhar Farooqui and golfnews.com, but good chunk of them would forward it to others. If you were to look at the traffic stats of this story, you will see it is one of the most read of all times for Golf News and possibly the highest spread story of Mazhar Farooqui. Stories like these was the fundamental reasons for the backlash within the journalistic community and sparked the formation of Ethical Journalism Initiative. ProPublica.org is also doing what it can to set things right. So there is hope after all. Golf News has its own code of conduct also. But from seeing firsthand on what they reported about me, it sure makes you question the very essence of Wild Wild West. They say half truth is more dangerous than full lie. What I want to do here, however, is give those who read the stories the other side and with proof provide serious lack of due diligence on the part of the reporter Mazhar Farooqui to complete breakdown of ethical values regardless of the lens you see to look at it. You'll be able to see firsthand Mr. Farooqui is not just an unethical journalist, but he has become part of the story itself for a reason known only to him. In fact, ethical journalism is more important than ever before, where people like him deliberately mislead the readers with hidden agendas. Can you imagine Golf News or any of their journalists daring to say that he or she does not support these principles, even if they are not member of the SPJ? I have already outreached to Mr. Farooqui and others within Golf News to see why this kind of reporting was allowed, and when there was no substantial response, I knocked on the High Court in London for defamation. I sued Mazhar Farooqui and golfnews.com both. If we don't do that, we're saying, go ahead and do me harm and I'll just whine about it. Or as my good friend Gord put it, how far do you want me to bend over? If we don't take a stand, we're enabling the behavior we despise. Any fair person who read the story in Golf News can judge for themselves on how many of the four pillars were adhered to. I'm going to bullet point some of the sections in the code and follow it with my response to include how Mr. Farooqi's stories about me in golfnews.com has real life ethical violations that have been reported about me. I will start with the four pillars of ethical reporting and then follow up with serious breaches of conduct to outright lies presented in his stories in Golf News. Number one, seek the truth and report it. It says journalists should be honest and fair in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. Journalists should test the accuracy of information from all sources and exercise care to avoid accidental errors. However, deliberate distortion is never permissible. In this story, it is clear the method of ensuring accuracy varied greatly, with some statements relayed with or without attribution based on a single subject's word, while others were rigorously triangulated. Journalism essence is a discipline of verification. How did Mr. Farooqui validate the accuracy of his information? What did he do to preserve the truth? Code of Ethics says diligently seek out the subject of news stories to give them the opportunity to respond to allegations of wrongdoing. Seeking out multiple witnesses, disclosing as much as possible about sources, or asking various sides for comments all signal ethical standards. The discipline of verification is what separates journalism from other forms of communication, such as propaganda, advertising, fiction, or entertainment. I was never contacted by Mr. Farooqui or anyone else from Gulf News, not before or even after the story was published, to ask any question, to refute serious allegations, or even to see what was being said about me was true or not. Would it not be fair to follow due process on what is being alleged and ask the person being accused of their response? Hey, so and so is saying this about you. Would you care to comment? Nothing of this sort took place. He published whatever he wanted about me without caring about what is right or wrong or the truth. His mind was already made long before the story was actually published. Ethic code also says always question sources' motives. Journalists should be as transparent as possible about sources and methods so audience can make their own assessment of the information. Even in a world of expanding voices, getting it right is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Context, interpretation, comment, criticism, analysis, and debate. The larger truth over time can only emerge from this form, from following a process. In this case, the prime witness was the sole shareholder and director of men who absolutely had alternative motive. Why was the basic common sense of what he was saying not looked into? Code of Ethic under Seek the Truth says to make sure the headlines, sound bites, quotations do not misrepresent. They should not oversimplify or highlight incidents out of context. They must strive to put the public interest and the truth above their own self interest or assumptions. The headline in this case was designed to draw your attention to a story at the damaging expense of me and my reputation. Reading the headline, you would believe that horrendous crime has been committed by me. The pre-context comes from the headline, and by the time people start to read the story, you are already presumed guilty. Guess what the public remembers? When they tell and share the story with others, guess what is the context of that sharing? The story was positioned for me to be guilty, where the lawyers, judge, and the jury was Mr. Farooqui and Gulf News. The code also says examine their own culture values and avoid imposing those values on others. This implies, for example, to the reality that Mr. Farooqui demonstrated a clear anti Mirza bias. If I'm being criticized, the default assumption is that the critic is right. That's a clear violation of SPG code. How this kind of reporting is allowed by Gulf News while claiming to be an impartial news organization is beyond my comprehension. According to the ethics, reporters are also supposed to minimize harm. If media inquiry appears to be heading in a direction that will harm your reputation and or bottom line, you certainly qualify as someone who may be affected adversely by news coverage. And you may also be an inexperienced source. Yet show me a single place where Mr. Farooqui appeared to generally show compassion for me or my name being dragged through the mud. For sure, should have fully verified what was being published with documented proof rather than hearsay. Code also says to act independently. Journalists should be free of obligation to any interest other than public's right to know. I will show first-hand proof on how this report was anything but independent. You'll be able to see He was not just reporting the story, but clearly was part of the story long before it was published. He was supposed to avoid conflict of interest, real or perceived. Independence is the cornerstone of reliability. On a deeper level, however, it is much more than that. It speaks to an independent of spirit with no self-interest and an open-mindedness to see the full picture, an intellectual curiosity that helps the journalist see beyond his or own class or ego. What is fundamentally important is the intellectual fairness and ability to inform, not their devotion to a certain group or outcome. Mazhar Farooqui was the part of the entire gang that was attacking me in the UK, and unlike him publishing without proof, I will provide proof of the conspiracy before, after, and during the story being published. Mazhar was to remain free of association and activities that may compromise integrity or damage credibility. Mazhar Farooqui broke this very principle of Reporters Code. You will see how he was trying to validate what he had already published after the story was out and when my legal action started. How does that make sense? If he had already done thorough investigation, why would he do that? If he already had the proof of what he published, I've had a number of people reach to me who highlighted things in that story which didn't make sense to them. Once I highlight them, every one of you who stands up for his civil rights is going to have the same questions as me. Here's a big one. Be accountable. You'll be able to see how Mazhar Farooqui from Gulfnews.com breached this accountability when he reported about me. It's no secret, journalists should admit mistakes and correct them promptly. The difference between those who hold themselves to higher standards and those who use propaganda to further their personal interests is acceptance of mistakes. In my case, I picked what Mazhar Farooqui written about me and first asked him simple questions on where did he get that information from. I sent him a long letter with highlighting the errors in his story. I did not hear anything back from him. As you will see, I then picked point by point and called him out on it. And once again, I did not hear anything from him, but I did find out that he sent my legal letters to others in the story asking for validation of what was already published. I will show exactly what transpired in the exchange. The propaganda I pointed out in his story were not only not answered, but were not corrected either. The purpose of his story was clear. It was to cause me as much harm as possible. He didn't want the correction to be made because citizens will then question his entire outlook. You don't need to eat the entire pot of rice to know if it is cooked or not. You can simply take a tiny nibble and you will know if the pot is fully ready. He knew this also. If he had to correct not one, but many mistakes one after the other, his whole story would fall apart. The notion here was simple. Let's write whatever causes Rocky the most harm and let him whine and justify it to the world, one person at a time, why it's fake news rather than responsible journalism. Ethics says, expose unethical practice of journalists and the news media. Journalism is our modern practice of drawing maps. Mazhar Farooqui created a map for citizens to navigate my life, which in his context made me come out to be the worst of kinds who robs others for his own personal gains. As with any map, its value depends on the completeness and proportionality in which the significant is given greater visibility than trivia. I could understand he was taken for a ride by luring of sensational storytelling, but most importantly, a story which people in his private WhatsApp group were ready to help him promote. When you, as a citizen of this world, read his story and see how many holes it has, what consequences should come to him and Gulf News? They were quick to report the alleged wrongdoings by me, but how do they measure themselves for the exact things they accuse me of? How often does golfnews.com report on the unethical practices of their own staff? It's up to us to push for this to happen more often. Today it is me, but tomorrow it could be you. I have chosen to not stay quiet, but how many others have this reporter harmed who simply left it to what goes round, it comes around? I'm ready to open all my books to any independent third party, but will golfnews.com do the same? Will they take action against Mazhar Farooqui when he's proven to be found guilty of his inappropriate conduct? Really ask yourself this. Will they take any action? Two things clearly separate the unethical reporters from those who actually produce an end product that is journalism. The first is the motive, and second is the intent. The purpose of journalism is clear. Do your best to provide people the information they need to make better decisions about their lives and society or a company. Yet, while the process is critical and important, it is the end product, the published story, by which journalism is ultimately judged. When I publish the facts about the story and what Mazhar Farooqui did, even an 8-year-old kid is going to be able to look at them and agree with the fact that Mazhar Farooqi's purpose and intent was not in the right place. He hid the truth. He made ethics a laughing stock, and he did harm to me without any regret whatsoever. At the very least, every person who sees the truth then has the same obligation as to what they did when they read the story. If you spread the story to 5 people, you have your own moral obligation to do the same when the truth is out. Most importantly, golfnews.com needs to use the same measuring sticks they used to measure my conduct for the conduct of their own reporter. Will golfnews.com do anything whatsoever to Mazhar Farooqui? Only time will tell. What to do when a reporter violates code of ethics and harms you personally or your company? I'm not the first person to become victim of sensational journalism wrapped up in the best interests of society, nor I will be the loss. If you or someone you know who has been affected by the vengeful hunt by an unethical reporter, reach out to me and I will give you a step-by-step guide on what you need to do. I'll be releasing series of videos on what has transpired this story from Mazhar Farooqui and Gulfnews.com, and you will see every step I took to have them set things right. Once you see the truth, think how you would have felt if this was done to you. Steps that I took were straightforward. First, step number 1, write it out. I wrote to Mazhar Farooqui and Gulf News the errors in the story. Step 2, appeal to the media outlet. In some cases, an appeal directly to a reasonable reporter may do the trick. In other cases, you may have to take the issue higher up, such as an editorial board. In my case, I did write top people in Gulf News. Step 3, see what action the media outlet takes. After your media appeal, do you still think there were violations? Did the media agree to make things right in a satisfactory manner? If so, good on you. That's a win. In my case, no action was taken by Gulf News that I know of, so I proceeded to step 4. Some will do step 5 first, but in my case, I went with step 4 first. Step 4, when there was no choice left, I knocked on the door of the justice system and sued Mazhar Farooqui and Gulf News for defamation in High Court in London. I will provide regular updates to the results of the lawsuit. Sooner or later, a judge who's qualified to separate the truth from lie will be able to look at everything and will be able to conclude exactly what those who are going to watch my next video will conclude. I was deliberately attacked to cause as much harm as possible. I have put all allegation into a civil lawsuit for defamation. This means the entire process is on public record. So what they alleged me of, they must now prove it in court. But most importantly, every single one of you will be able to access the entire showdown. Step 5. Fight back in the court of public opinion. Gulf News or any traditional media no longer have the monopoly on communication with broad audience. The internet provides each of us with many ways to respond to wrongdoings. Now that is already in the high court, time for me to put it in front of the public opinion also. You be the judge. In my next video, I'm going to publish how many lies in golfnews.com story. Those of you who read the story spot the smoke, lies and propaganda by Mazhar Farooqui. Let's see how many do you find. If a reporter purposely publishes a single lie and when called out on it, he does not correct his error, what is the value of the rest of the story? In my next video, I'm going to show you exact questions I asked Mazhar Farooqui and golfnews.com. Not a single question was answered. You will see all the questions I asked of them and you will agree question after question after question. Mr. Farooqui did me serious harm and did not validate his information. You be the judge. Because at the end, those who never change their mind never change anything. Thank you very much. Until next video, have a nice day.